What's going on, everyone? Coming up on today's show, we're going to run through some of the major news and rumor storylines heading into Browns training camp as the rookies reported today. The veterans are going to report tomorrow. Then the whole team will head to West Virginia to the Greenbrier Resort where they will open up training camp. Now, on today's show, I want to run through the Deshaun Watson kind of injury status slash rehab update going into camp. Then we're going to look at the latest revolving around Amari Cooper's contract situation as a Browns insider shared some more intel on that. And then finally, is Nick Chubb, quote, behind? We're going to talk about all that on today's show. But let's start with QB1, as it's not a clear picture as to what to expect from Deshaun Watson when training camp opens up for veterans tomorrow on Tuesday. Now, during the spring, he was throwing every other day during practice, and that was definitely a good sign of progress. And that was 6, 8, 9 weeks ago. Like, we're getting closer and closer to week one. And the hope is we're going to see Deshaun Watson be at a full participation level for the start of training camp. Now, I'm pretty optimistic when I say there will be no PUP list for Deshaun Watson, which may not be the case for Nick Chubb, and we'll explain that in more detail later on. I don't want to say it's a guarantee because I don't want to jinx anything. Plus, going on the PUP list is not like some death kiss or anything like that. But thankfully, Deshaun has made a lot of progress and by a lot of accounts is ahead of his schedule in his rehab. And so there's a lot of just overall optimism that when training camp gets going, Deshaun Watson, from a health perspective, is going to be in a very good spot. Now, Watson also spoke to the media during his 7-on-7 quarterback, 7-on-7 football camp, and he talked about the offense this year. And he had this to say: I think it's going to get a little feel of Kevin Stefanski and that NFL style, and then you're going to get a little Dorsey and that college style. I know those guys want to be very explosive and want to score a lot of points. Now, from a micro level, I'm not expecting Deshaun Watson to reveal the play calling and the offensive scheme for this upcoming season. Every offensive player going into every season says something pretty similar to what Watson said about scoring a lot of points and being explosive. Like, I don't know if I've ever heard an NFL team say, we're aiming to score about 12 to 15 points and we want maybe one or two explosive plays a game. But from a macro level, there's no excuses for Deshaun Watson in 2024, right? He's going to be fully recovered and healthy when the season gets underway from that shoulder surgery he suffered last year. He'll have a new offensive coordinator in Ken Dorsey, one that I believe that was picked to lean into his strength a little bit more than what AVP was doing. It's his third year with the Browns. He's very far removed from missing the entire 2021 season. I don't want to hear any more rust, really. The guy has missed a lot of football, but at some point, that's got to get behind him. So no excuses for Deshaun Watson going into 2024. And I'm a big believer in Deshaun Watson having a strong 2024 season. Of course, his 2 years in Cleveland have been underwhelming, but I think the most important stat here is just the lack of availability. Like, I don't really care too much about the touchdown to interception ratio. I want to see this guy on the field. Now, you knew what you signed up for going into 2022 with the suspension incoming. 2023 was just unfortunate with all the injuries. Like, that's just stuff that's not really in his control, and he played through a lot of injuries. He came back too soon in that Colts game. He played through a broken shoulder in the second half of the Ravens game. So I don't want to hear any radio host challenging his toughness. But hopefully in 2024, there's no suspension issues, there's no injuries, and we can get a full season like we saw in 2020 when he threw for nearly 5,000 yards and led the NFL in passing. Now, let me know if you think Deshaun Watson will throw for 25 touchdowns this season. Give me a Y for yes or an N for no down below in the comment section. This is the pinned comment, so if YouTube sticks an ad break around this point, which it tends to do, while that ad is rolling, scroll on down and give me a Y for yes or an N for no. Now, next up on the show, I want to talk about Amari Cooper's contract status, as Mary Kay Cabot from Cleveland.com had some things to share and put into light when it comes to Cooper's contract situation. So we're going to break that all down on today's show. But first, a quick shout out to our sponsor today, Game Time. Today's show is sponsored by Game Time. If you love summer baseball and want to catch a Guardians game or any other major league team in your area, you're going to want to give Game Time a shot. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. Now, one thing I really like about Game Time is their flash deals. Save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. Plus, they offer the game time guarantee. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, create an account and redeem code CHATSPORTS, CHAT Sports, for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Now, here's what Mary Kay had to say on Amari Cooper's contract situation. The Browns hope to reach a contract agreement with Cooper before the start of camp next week so he doesn't have to miss a beat. The two sides have been in contact and are trying to strike a deal Cooper feels good about heading into his third season here. He's set to make $20 million this season in the final year of his contract and wants to be closer to his elite peers, who are now making anywhere from about $24 million a year to $35 million. Hopefully, we'll get an Amari Cooper contract resolution sometime over the next week. I'm not going to panic if it doesn't happen in the first week of training camp for the Browns. Like we saw Nick Chubb get a contract extension, sometime was that like August 10th-ish of 2021. So these things can take a little bit of time, but hopefully we'll get one done in the near-ish future. Now, Mary Kay did point out a really good point about Amari Cooper's $20 million salary and how that compares to his peers. I want to share with you guys the top 20 highest paid wide receivers in football so you can kind of look at where Amari Cooper is amongst other guys in his kind of general age and receiving tier. I don't think Cooper's trying to get into the top 10, and I don't believe the Browns are going to put him into the top 10. But I think Cooper wants to go from where he currently is at 20, somewhere around 17 to 15, right? I think he wants to jump up a little bit above Keenan Allen, Mike Evans, DJ Moore. Not that he's a slam dunk better receiver than those guys, but those guys recently got a new deal or some kind of payment, and I think Cooper's looking to jump into that 21, 22, maybe into $23 million, but the Browns and Cooper know a 30-year-old wide receiver with 1 year left on his contract isn't going to have a ton of leverage to demand an insane ask. Now, if I had to just project, and again, these are just my projections. This is not anything Andrew Barry has texted me in the middle of the night. I'm thinking the Browns are willing to offer Cooper a 1 year, $23-ish million extension. Maybe it's closer to 22 or 21, but a couple $1 million over what he's currently making, which is $20 million. My guess is Cooper wants to get a 2-year extension, right? He wants to be under contract for 2025 and 2026. In the initial reporting from Brad Stainbrook said the Browns were open to a 1-year extension, but Cooper's looking for a bit longer than that. And I think that seems to be the point of disagreement. And ultimately, when this gets resolved, which I fully expect it to, we'll see who kind of comes out winning, so to speak, right? Is it the Browns giving Cooper a 1-year deal and not putting too much money on the line for a 30-year-old wide receiver? Or is Cooper going to get more long-term assurance? Now, Amari Cooper for the Browns has been one of the best receivers, arguably, if not the best receiver in franchise history. I mean, I know that's not fair to say he's only played 2 seasons, but he made a lot of history in those 2 seasons. He's the only receiver in franchise history to go over 1,000 yards in back-to-back years. He holds the Browns' single-game receiving record against the Texans with well over 200. And Cooper, you can make an argument that he's been better with the Browns as he's gotten closer to 30 than when he was arguably, in quote, the peak of his athletic, career or abilities with the Cowboys, where he had 1,900 yards, 13 touchdowns from 2020 to 2021, compared to the last 2 years in Cleveland. He's got 500 more yards on 10 fewer grabs. Like, talk about the explosiveness only going up as he's getting older. Like, a lot of times you see receivers get up in the age column and teams use them in the red zone. They use them to move the sticks on 3rd and 7. Amari Cooper at the age of 29 is running better with the football in his hands than he was at 23 years old. Like, Cooper is aging like a fine wine. So I'm all for extending Amari Cooper. I don't think he's showing any signs of slowing down. The guy has been one of the most available players amongst all wide receivers for the last near decade or so. So, yeah, mark me down as a believer that Amari Cooper is not going to fall off a cliff because he's only been getting better the last couple of years, and he's never had a history of injuries in his career or long-term injuries. Now, before we get to the Nick Chubb portion of today's show, help us reach 35,000 subscribers before training camp really gets underway. I'm calling on 133 of you watching right now who are not subscribed to go ahead and do so. Lock yourself in for the best free Browns YouTube content out there. And if you don't like it after a week, you can always unsubscribe. But I guarantee that you're going to enjoy the content we put out. So go ahead, hit that sub button down below. Now let's switch gears and talk about Nick Chubb, because I saw some chatter over the weekend about Nick Chubb's injury status being concerning due to a recent Instagram post of his. And I don't think people are doing a good job of giving the full context of Nick Chubb's Instagram post. So I saw this article from Evan Massey, and he talked about Nick Chubb's injury status and the concern around it. And he said, in a recent quote shared on Instagram, Chubb stated that he feels that he's, quote, behind in his recovery. The words "in his recovery" are not really accurate from Evan. Here's what Nick Chubb posted word for word on Instagram via his JOC Films, which has been documenting his recovery. April 2024. It's different now because I feel like I'm behind. Usually I'm healthy and I'm working to get faster and stronger. Now I'm just trying to catch up to get to the person I once was. So a couple of things that were not shared with an Evans post that Nick Chubb had on his Instagram. One, that's what Nick Chubb said in April. So things have changed, I would imagine, from April to July. Two, Nick Chubb didn't say, and I'm going to read his quote again, that he feels behind in his recovery. He feels behind because he's usually in a faster and stronger standpoint. Not that he feels like he should be further ahead in his recovery, but that for where he should be in the middle of the offseason at the age of 29, 28 years old, he feels like he should be faster or stronger. That's just true for everyone coming back from an injury. They always feel like they are behind where they once were when they were healthy. But then you finish your rehab and hopefully you come out where you were before, or sometimes even faster or stronger than where you were before because of all the work you put in during your rehab. But I don't think that people should look at that quote from Nick Chubb and think, oh, he's behind in his recovery. No, he feels like he is behind where he usually would be at this point. And that's what's different. I think those are two very distinct differences in what Evan said and what Nick Chubb said. Now, some background on Chubb going into training camp. We're going to have the PUP list be announced soon. Now, what is the PUP list? You've probably heard it a couple of times over the last 72 hours or so. So the PUP list is the physically unable to perform list. Now, Nick Chubb is definitely a candidate to start on the PUP list. Now, if you are on the PUP list, you cannot practice. You are able to participate in team meetings and workouts and work with the trainers, but you are unable to practice. Now, if you are on the PUP list to start the season, you are locked in to miss the first 4 weeks of the season. You also can't join the PUP list once training camp starts. It's only something you can be added to before camp breaks ground. So if you get injured during training camp, your only options are to sit to the side and take up a roster spot or go to injured reserve, which before this year, that meant you were done for the entire 2020 or whatever season that is with that team. But now guys can go on IR before roster cutdown day and then be placed on the active roster and not be disqualified for the remainder of the season. If Nick Chubb ultimately starts on the PUP list, though, no panic from my side. There's always a lot of guys that start the year on the PUP list. Again, it's a list that does not remove you from the season or anything like that. If the training camp preseason ends and you're still on the PUP list, you go from the active PUP list to the reserve PUP list, and that's when you miss the first 4 weeks, but that's a long ways away from now. Now, if you are on the PUP list, you still do count towards the 90-man roster. So don't look at it, oh, they put him on the PUP list so they can free up a roster spot. No, I see that every once in a while. That's just false. So no Chubb on my no Chubb, no panic on my end if Nick Chubb is on the PUP list to open up the season. I'll say it's kind of expected, and they're going to work him back when they're ready. Now, before we sign off, quick reminder, we're going to have a channel meet and greet Thursday, August 1st. We're looking at, 10 days away from now? Noon Eastern time in downtown Cleveland at Masthead Brewing Company. So if you're going to be in attendance, I just want to get a good head count because usually I make a joke at this point about getting enough appetizers for everyone. But this time I want to know how many heads to expect so I can make sure we all have a great time. So type me in the comment section below if you'll be in attendance. Would love to put some faces to all the names that have been commenting on our videos for a long time. So here are the details. Come hang out with us next Thursday, noon Eastern at Masthead Brewing in downtown Cleveland. All right, let's wrap up the show by picking a card. We got the newest member of the Chat Sports family, Matt Goldman, on the 1s and 2s today. Matt, which card do you want to go with? You know he's new because he's muted himself. Try again.
Let's do the 8 of clubs.
There it is. Everyone can hear the 8 of clubs now. I'm going to go with the Jack of Hearts. No. 3 of Hearts. 3 of Hearts. All right, that will do it for us on today's show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We will sign off and see you guys later.